strange law is introduced in this week's Parsha. It's described as being called a chok. For some, the word chok means something which we don't understand. And when it comes to this law, the chok, it's the red heifer, the para aduma. It's something which indeed there are many elements we really don't understand. It's not really an offering. The animal that needs to be brought has really very specific specifications. The person who'd been in contact with the dead becomes purified, and the person who's involved in the production of this becomes impurified. Which means there's something quite mysterious about this, and hence it's called a chok. As opposed to something called a mishpat. A mishpat is a type of law that most of us, if we were put alone in a room and asked to come up with some laws, the laws we would come up with are the mishpatim, is the mishpat of the laws. Don't murder. Don't commit adultery. Don't steal. Those are the kinds of laws which, on a social level, are very productive. Those are the mishpatim, the laws that we would come up with ourselves. This idea of the red heifer, of the ashes of the red heifer, which can purify somebody, that we never would have come up with. There's a passage in the Talmud that at the very end of the story, almost for good measure, perhaps poetic justice, it throws in a red heifer. The story is about a man named Dama ben Nitina. And this man, we're told right away, is an idolater. And that's something we should understand. Judaism as a whole, certainly in antiquity, was not fond of idolatry nor idolaters. There's a war that was going on, a cultural war, a religious war, between monotheists and those who were polytheists. And the war was going on both ways. So for the Talmud to bring an example, as it's about to do, the question is posed, who is somebody who really excelled in the law, the mishpat, of honoring one's parents? And it tells us, there was an idolater from Ashkelon, and his name was Dama ben Nitina. And he was unbelievable. And there are various stories about him. The most famous one is that the rabbis needed to purchase something. They needed to purchase a very valuable stone, which was going to be used for the temple service. And Dama ben Nitina had one. The only problem is that the key to the safe, as it were, was underneath his father's head. And Dama ben Nitina, despite being offered a great deal of money, refused to wake up his father. Now, there's many questions of the story. Why didn't he ask them to wait? Why didn't he say to them, have a seat, bring them something to eat or to drink or to whatever the case may be, or say, I'll get back to you, I'll bring it to you, but rather he doesn't take the advantage of where he knew he'd make a lot of money. We're told that subsequently, born into his flock, and in some sources it's immediate, a red heifer is born. And the rabbis come and they say, we want to purchase this red heifer. And he says, I know I can ask you for any amount of money in the world. Let me instead just ask you for the money that I lost when I was honoring my father. And it's such an interesting story because I want to really break it down into these two different elements. Honoring one's parents, which makes a lot of sense. All of us understand it. Or, to really quote the old commercial, you don't have to be Jewish to honor your parents. I mean, once upon a time, there was a really famous idolater who lived in Ashkelon, and many, many people throughout history have honored their parents, honored their father, honored their mother, and let's be honest, many of them were not Jewish, and the Talmud's not afraid to say that. Which means when it comes to this law, which makes perfect sense, honoring one's parents, why? Because they brought us into the world, they take care of us, they gave us sustenance, give us shelter, love us. So the least that we can do is to respect them and take care of them and care for them. And it's really, of all the laws in the Torah, maybe the most logical. And there are those who have argued that. So it's interesting that the reward he gets for the logical commandment is a red heifer, which we don't understand at all, comes into his flock. And that's what the Jews really want and the Jews really need. Which means that Judaism is not only about keeping the laws which we understand. It's also about keeping the laws that we know we can't even begin to understand. Hopefully, with the help of God, we do both. We do the things which make sense to us, but we also do those laws which perhaps requires what has been called a leap of faith. And we do the laws that we don't understand or don't understand yet, and maybe even we do them because we don't understand them. I mean, think a second. In a relationship, What's really more valuable? The things that we do for the other, where we know exactly why we're doing it, we know exactly what we're getting out of it, or the things that we do for the other simply because they asked us, even though we don't really know the reason.